There are seasons when heaven feels quiet. Moments when the prayers we whisper seem to drift into silence, unanswered, when the world around us is still, and the only sound is the echo of our own longing. Maybe you know this feeling, the ache of waiting, the uncertainty of not hearing God's voice. I remember a time in my own life when I felt this silence deeply. It was a season marked by loss and confusion, when every prayer felt like it dissolved into the air, unheard. I would sit by my window, watching the rain trace patterns on the glass, wondering if God was listening at all. The quiet was heavy, almost tangible, pressing in on my heart. I searched for answers in Scripture, in the words of friends, in the stillness of the night. But all I found was more silence. In those moments I learned that silence is not absence. Sometimes the quiet is where God invites us to listen more deeply, to notice the gentle stirrings of hope that can only be heard when everything else is still. It's in the quiet that we confront our fears, our doubts, and our deepest questions. We wonder if we've been forgotten, if our faith is enough, if hope is still possible. But the quiet is also a space for reflection. It's a pause in the noise of life, a chance to breathe, to rest, to simply be. In the silence, we can remember the times when God has spoken before, through a kind word, a sunrise, a moment of unexpected peace. We can recall the stories of others who have walked through their own quiet seasons and found hope on the other side. Sometimes the silence is an invitation to trust, to believe that even when we cannot hear God, He is still present, still working, still loving us. It's a chance to let go of our need for immediate answers and to rest in the mystery of faith. If you find yourself in a season when heaven feels quiet, know that you are not alone. Many have walked this path before you, and many will walk it after. The silence does not mean you are forgotten. It may be the very place where hope is born anew. So take a breath. Sit with the quiet. Let it wash over you, not as emptiness, but as a gentle space where God is nearer than you think. Sometimes when heaven feels quiet, it is simply making room for something beautiful to grow. Gentle, reflective tone. You pray, and all you hear is silence. Maybe you know this feeling all too well. You find yourself in a quiet room, hands clasped, heart open, words tumbling out in whispers or sometimes just in your thoughts. You reach out, hoping for a sign, a word, a feeling, anything to let you know you've been heard. But instead, there's only stillness. The silence feels heavy, almost tangible, pressing in around you. It's a silence that can feel endless. You might glance at the clock, wondering how long you've been waiting. Minutes feel like hours. Days stretch into weeks. You keep returning to that same spot, by your bed, in your car, on a walk, hoping that this time, maybe, you'll sense something different. But the quiet remains. Maybe you've written your prayers in a journal, pouring out your hopes, your fears, your deepest questions. You close the book, expecting some kind of answer to come, but the pages stay silent. Or perhaps you've lit a candle, watched its flame dance and waited for a sign in the flicker of the light. Still nothing. Sometimes the silence is so loud it drowns out everything else. You look for answers in the world around you, in the advice of friends, in the words of a song, in the beauty of a sunrise. But even then, it feels like God is far away, unreachable, hidden behind a wall of quiet. You're not alone in this. So many people have experienced the ache of unanswered prayers. Maybe you've heard stories of others who say they hear God's voice clearly, who talk about miraculous answers and signs, and you wonder, why not me? What am I doing wrong? Is God even listening? There's a kind of vulnerability in praying and hearing only silence. It can make you question your faith, your worth, your relationship with God. You might feel abandoned, forgotten, or invisible. The silence can be confusing, even painful. It's easy to start doubting, to wonder if your prayers matter at all. But in this quiet, something else can happen. Sometimes the silence invites us to slow down, to listen more deeply, not just for a voice, but for a presence. It's in these moments that we can begin to notice the subtle ways God might be near, even if He isn't speaking in the way we expect. Think about the times you've sat with a friend in silence, not needing words to feel their support, or the way a parent might hold a child, offering comfort without saying anything at all. Sometimes, love is quiet. Sometimes, presence is enough. If you're in a season where your prayers seem to echo back to you unanswered, know that you're not alone. Many have walked this path before you. Even some of the greatest figures in faith, people like David, Job, and even Jesus, experienced moments when God seemed silent. It's okay to feel frustrated, to ask questions, to long for answers. It's okay to keep praying. even when it feels like no one is listening. The silence doesn't mean you've been forgotten. It doesn't mean your prayers don't matter. Sometimes the silence is part of the journey. So if you're praying and all you hear is silence, take heart. You are seen, you are heard, and even in the quiet, hope can be found. Soft pause. The silence isn't the end of your story, it's just a chapter, and sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the quietest places. Soft, reflective tone. There are moments in life when silence feels overwhelming. You sit alone, the world outside blurred by rain, and you wonder, has God forgotten me? God, where are you? These questions echo in the quiet, sometimes louder than any spoken word. Maybe you've prayed for answers, for comfort, for a sign, and all you've received is silence. The ache of waiting, the uncertainty can make you feel invisible, abandoned, or unworthy of God's attention. Gentle, empathetic. If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. Throughout history, even the most faithful have wrestled with these same doubts. In the Psalms, David cries out, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" Psalm 13:1. These words, written thousands of years ago, still resonate today. They remind us that feeling forgotten is a deeply human experience, one that even those closest to God have faced. Pause, then reassuring. But what does it really mean when God seems silent? Does his silence mean he's absent, or that he's stopped caring? The Bible tells us otherwise. In Isaiah 49:15, God says, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you." God's love is steadfast even when we can't sense it. His silence is not his absence. Reflective. Sometimes God's silence is an invitation to trust, to wait, to grow. It's in these quiet seasons that our faith is stretched and deepened. Think of Joseph, who spent years in prison, forgotten by those he helped, or Elijah, who hid in a cave feeling utterly alone. Yet, in their waiting, God was working. He was shaping their character, preparing them for what was to come. Personal reflection. I remember a time in my own life when I felt completely forgotten. Prayers seemed to bounce off the ceiling. I questioned my worth, my purpose, and even my faith. But looking back, I see how God was gently guiding me, even in the silence. He was teaching me to rely on him, to find hope not in immediate answers, but in his unchanging promises. Comforting. If you're in a season of silence right now, know this: God sees you. He hears every whispered prayer, every silent tear. Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows, you have collected all my tears in your bottle." Not one moment of your pain is overlooked by him. Encouraging. Sometimes God's silence is a space for us to discover his presence in new ways. It's an opportunity to lean into his word, to remember his faithfulness in the past, and to trust that he is working, even when we can't see it. Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Even in silence, God is weaving your story with purpose and love. Gentle conclusion. So, has God forgotten you? No. Even when you can't feel him, he is closer than you think. His silence is not a sign of abandonment, but an invitation to deeper faith. Hold on to hope, keep praying, keep seeking, and trust that God is with you in the quiet. The silence will not last forever. In time, you will see how he was with you all along, working in ways you never imagined. Soft, hopeful. You are not forgotten. You are deeply loved. And even in the silence, God is near. Gentle pause. But silence doesn't mean absence. Sometimes when everything feels quiet, when prayers seem to echo back unanswered, it's easy to believe that we've been left alone. But the truth is, silence can be full of presence, even if we can't see or hear it in the ways we expect. Imagine a seed planted deep in the earth. For weeks, maybe months, there's no sign of life above the soil. The world above is silent, still. But beneath the surface, something is happening. Roots are reaching out, growth is beginning, even though it's hidden from sight. The silence is not emptiness, it's preparation. In the same way, when God is silent, it doesn't mean he's absent. Sometimes the quiet is where the deepest work is being done. It's in the silence that we learn to listen with our hearts, to trust beyond what we can see or hear. Like the seed, we are being prepared for something new, something beautiful. Think of the night sky. When the sun sets and darkness falls, it can feel lonely and vast. But if you wait, your eyes adjust and you begin to see the stars, tiny points of light that were always there, just hidden by the brightness of day. God's presence is like that, sometimes hidden but never gone. If you're in a season of silence, know that you are not forgotten. The quiet can be a gentle invitation to rest, to reflect, to grow. It's a space where hope can take root, even if you can't feel it right now. Remember, even when you can't hear God, He is still with you. His love is steady, His presence constant, even in the quietest moments. Silence is not the end of the story, it's often the beginning of something new. So take heart, the silence is not empty. It is full of possibility, full of hope, and full of God's quiet, unwavering presence. God is working, even when we can't see it. In the stillness of the night, when the world seems to be at a standstill, God is at work. Just as the clock ticks away the seconds, minutes, and hours, so too does God move in ways unseen, orchestrating the events of our lives with divine precision. Consider the sunrise, a daily miracle that often goes unnoticed. As the light breaks through the darkness, it symbolizes hope and new beginnings. Even when we are unaware, the sun rises each day, bringing warmth and light to the world. Similarly, God's work in our lives often happens behind the scenes, bringing hope and renewal in ways we may not immediately recognize. Think about the seeds planted in the ground. They lie hidden beneath the soil, seemingly dormant. Yet within them is the potential for life, growth, and transformation. With time, care, and the right conditions, they sprout and flourish. God's work in our lives is much like this. Though we may not see immediate results, He is nurturing and cultivating our growth, preparing us for the right moment to bloom. There are countless stories of individuals who have experienced God's unseen hand in their lives. One such story is of a woman who, after years of struggling with infertility, finally conceived. She often felt abandoned and hopeless, but in hindsight, she realized that God was preparing her heart and life for the arrival of her child. Her journey, though painful, was a testament to God's perfect timing and unseen work. Another testimony comes from a man who lost his job and faced financial ruin. During this dark period, he felt abandoned and questioned his faith. However, through this trial he discovered new skills, found a better job, and ultimately started his own successful business. Looking back, he saw that God was redirecting his path, even when he couldn't see it. In moments of silence and stillness, when it feels like nothing is happening, remember that God is at work. He is shaping, molding, and preparing us for the future. Just as a potter carefully shapes clay, God is intricately involved in our lives, even when we can't see His hands at work. The river flows gently, carving its path through the landscape, often unnoticed. But over time, it shapes valleys and canyons, creating breathtaking beauty. God's work in our lives is similar. It may seem slow and imperceptible, but it is constant and purposeful, leading us to places of beauty and growth. So, take heart and find hope in the quiet moments. Trust that God is working even when you can't see it. His plans for you are good, and His timing is perfect. Embrace the journey, knowing that you are never alone, and that God's unseen hand is guiding you every step of the way. Gentle, reflective tone. Even Jesus faced silence for 3 days. Imagine that moment. The Son of God, the one who healed the sick, calmed the storms, and spoke words of life, now lay silent in a cold, dark tomb. The world held its breath. His followers, who had walked with Him, listened to His teachings, and witnessed His miracles, were left in a place of deep uncertainty and sorrow. For 3 days there were no answers, no miracles, no voice from heaven, just silence. Soft music begins. Think about what those 3 days must have felt like for His friends and family. The pain of loss, the confusion, the questions that must have echoed in their minds. Why did this happen? Where is God now? Was everything we believed in just a dream? The silence must have felt unbearable, stretching on with every passing hour, and yet in that silence something profound was happening. Even though it seemed like nothing was changing, God was at work in ways no one could see. The silence was not the end of the story. It was a pause, a sacred space between heartbreak and hope, between death and resurrection. We all face our own 3 days at times. Seasons when God seems silent, when prayers go unanswered, when hope feels distant. Maybe you're in that place right now. Maybe you're waiting for a breakthrough, longing for a sign, desperate for a word from God. The silence can feel heavy, even suffocating. But remember, even Jesus, the very Son of God, experienced this silence. He knows what it's like to wait in the darkness, to feel abandoned, to wonder if the story is really over. But the story wasn't over for Jesus, and it's not over for you. The silence of the tomb was not a sign of God's absence, but a part of His greater plan. In the quiet, unseen places, God was preparing the greatest miracle the world would ever know. Resurrection was coming, hope was about to break through the darkness. So if you find yourself in a season of silence, take heart. You are not alone. The silence does not mean God has forgotten you. It may be the very space where He is working most powerfully, shaping your story in ways you cannot yet imagine. Hold on, trust in the quiet, because just as the dawn broke over the empty tomb, bringing new life and hope, your story too can be transformed. Soft music swells. Even Jesus faced silence for 3 days, and in that silence hope was being born. Gentle, reverent pause. But on the third day, He rose. The silence of the grave was shattered by the most triumphant moment in all of history. Where there had been darkness, now there was light. Where there had been despair, now there was hope. The stone that sealed the tomb could not hold Him. Death itself could not keep Him bound. In the quiet of the early morning, as the world still slumbered, something miraculous happened. The Son of God, who had been crucified, who had been laid in a borrowed tomb, rose again, alive, victorious, and forever changed. Imagine the scene. The garden is still, the air cool and heavy with the scent of dew. The birds begin to sing, their melodies weaving through the olive branches. The earth itself seems to hold its breath. Then, in a burst of golden light, the stone is rolled away, not by human hands but by the power of God. The grave clothes are left behind, folded with care, a silent testimony that death has been defeated. Mary Magdalene and the other women come to the tomb, hearts heavy with grief, carrying spices to anoint His body. But instead of sorrow, they are met with wonder. The angel's words ring out, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, He has risen." Their tears of mourning turn to tears of joy. Their fear is replaced by awe. They run to tell the disciples, their voices trembling with excitement and hope. The disciples, still reeling from the pain of loss, race to the tomb. Peter and John run side by side, breathless, desperate to see for themselves. They find the tomb empty, the grave clothes lying there, and slowly the truth dawns on them. Jesus is alive. The impossible has happened. The promise has been fulfilled. In that moment, everything changes. The silence that once felt so heavy is now filled with the sound of hope. The darkness that seemed endless is now pierced by the light of resurrection. The story does not end in the grave. It begins anew, with life, with victory, with the assurance that God's love is stronger than death. The resurrection is not just an event in history, it is the turning point of all creation. It is the declaration that God's silence is never the end of the story. When all seemed lost, when hope seemed buried, God was at work in the quiet, preparing a miracle that would change the world forever. Because He rose, we have hope that endures. Because He lives, we know that silence is not abandonment, but the prelude to glory. The resurrection is the ultimate answer to every doubt, every fear, every moment when God seems silent. It is the proof that even in the darkest night, dawn is coming. Even in the deepest sorrow, joy will break through. Picture the faces of those who saw Him alive, their disbelief turning to laughter, their sorrow to dancing. Jesus appears to Mary in the garden, calling her by name. He walks with the disciples on the road to Emmaus, breaking bread and opening their eyes. He stands among His friends, showing them His hands and His side, speaking peace into their troubled hearts. The resurrection is the heartbeat of our faith. It is the reason we can face tomorrow, no matter how silent or uncertain today may feel. It is the assurance that God is always working, even when we cannot see or hear Him. The empty tomb is a promise that life will triumph over death, that love will conquer fear, that hope will rise from the ashes. So let us celebrate this moment, not just as a story from long ago, but as the living reality that shapes our lives today. Let us rejoice in the victory of Christ, who broke the silence with a shout of life. Let us hold fast to the hope that the resurrection brings, knowing that because He lives, we too shall live, triumphant, joyful. On the third day He rose. The silence is broken, the grave is empty, hope is alive. And because of this, we can face every silence, every shadow, every sorrow with the unshakable confidence that God is with us, and that His story always ends in resurrection. You know, your silence will end in praise. Maybe right now, you're sitting in the quiet wondering if God hears you at all. The silence can feel endless, like a long night with no sign of morning. But I want to encourage you, this silence is not the end of your story. It's a chapter, not the conclusion. Throughout history, some of the greatest stories of faith began in silence. Think of Joseph, sitting in a prison cell, forgotten by everyone except God. Or Hannah, pouring out her heart in the temple, her prayers met with years of waiting. Even Jesus in the garden faced the silence of heaven before the cross. Yet, in every case, the silence was broken by a song of praise. Your silence is not a sign of God's absence. It's often the space where He is working most deeply, preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. The quiet is where roots grow deep, where faith is refined, and where hope is born. It's in the silence that God shapes your story for His glory. I know it's hard, I know the waiting can feel unbearable, but hold on. The Bible says, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning." Your night will not last forever. The dawn is coming, and with it, a new song. Let me share a story. There was a woman who prayed for years for her family to find peace. She heard nothing. No sign, no answer, just silence. But she kept praying, kept believing. One day, unexpectedly, her family was restored. The silence gave way to laughter, to tears of joy, to praise. Her story is not unique. All over the world, people are discovering that God's silence is not His absence, but His preparation for something beautiful. Maybe you feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling. Maybe you're tired, discouraged, or even angry. That's okay. God can handle your honesty. Bring your doubts, your fears, your questions to Him. He is not offended by your pain. In fact, He draws near to the brokenhearted. In the silence, worship. In the waiting, trust. Even when you can't see the way forward, keep moving one step at a time. Your faith, even if it's as small as a mustard seed, is precious to God. He sees you, He hears you, and He is working, even now, behind the scenes. One day, you will look back on this season and see how God was with you every step of the way. The silence will make sense, the waiting will have been worth it, and your heart will overflow with praise, not just for the answer, but for the God who never left your side. So don't give up. Don't lose hope. Your silence will end in praise. The God who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. Hold on to His promises, trust in His timing, and know that your story is not over yet. The quiet you feel now is just the prelude to a beautiful song. Your silence will end in praise. Gentle, encouraging tone. Sometimes the journey feels endless. The road ahead looks long, and every step can feel heavier than the last. Maybe you've been walking for what seems like forever and you're tired. You're worn out from waiting, from hoping, from praying, and not hearing anything back. Maybe you've started to wonder if God is even listening or if He's forgotten about you altogether. But I want to tell you, don't give up. Keep walking. Even when you can't see what's ahead, even when the silence feels overwhelming, keep moving forward. God is not done with your story. He's not finished with you yet. Think about the people who have gone before us. Think about Joseph, who spent years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He must have felt abandoned, forgotten, and alone. But God was working behind the scenes, preparing him for something greater. Or consider Moses, who wandered the desert for 40 years, leading a people who often doubted and complained. Moses didn't see the promised land himself, but his faithfulness changed the course of history. Real life is full of moments when we want to quit. Maybe you've lost a job, or a relationship has ended, or you're facing a diagnosis that scares you. Maybe you're just tired of feeling stuck, like nothing is changing. But every step you take, no matter how small, is a step closer to breakthrough. Every day you choose to keep going, you're building strength, resilience, and faith. There are people all around us who have faced impossible odds and kept walking. The single parent who works 2 jobs to provide for their children, even when they feel exhausted. The student who studies late into the night, determined to create a better future. The person battling addiction, who chooses every day to stay clean, even when it's hard. These are stories of courage, of perseverance, of hope. And your story matters too. Your journey is important. You may not see the results right now, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. Seeds grow in silence, deep beneath the soil, long before we see the first green shoot. God is working in the quiet, in the waiting, in the places you can't see. So when you feel like giving up, remember, you are not alone. God walks with you, even when you can't feel Him. He sees every tear, hears every prayer, and knows every struggle. He is not done with you. The silence is not the end of your story, it's just a chapter. Keep walking. Take the next step, even if it's small. Trust that God is working, even in the silence. Hold on to hope, even when it feels out of reach. You are stronger than you think, and you are never alone. If you need to rest, rest. If you need to cry, cry. But don't stop moving forward. Don't let the silence convince you that God has forgotten you. He is faithful, and He is with you, every step of the way. Remember, some of the greatest victories come after the longest waits. Some of the most beautiful stories are written in the darkest nights. Your breakthrough could be just around the corner. Don't give up, keep walking, God is not done. gentle, hopeful tone. Your story is still being written. Even now, in this very moment, the next chapter of your life is unfolding, sometimes quietly, sometimes in ways you can't yet see. Maybe you feel like you're stuck on a page that's too heavy to turn, or maybe you're waiting for a sign, a word, a breakthrough. But the truth is, your story isn't finished. There are still blank pages ahead, waiting for your hopes, your dreams, your prayers. Soft music swells. Every sunrise brings a new beginning. Every breath is a chance to start again. The silence you feel right now isn't the end of your story. It's a pause, a space where something beautiful can grow. Just as a seed rests in the dark earth before it breaks through to the light, you too are being prepared for what's next. Encouraging. Maybe you can't see the whole picture yet. Maybe the path ahead feels uncertain, and the silence feels endless. But remember, some of the most powerful stories are written in the quiet moments, in the waiting, in the hope that refuses to give up. You are not alone in this. Others have walked this path before you, and many are walking it with you now. Think about the stories you love, the ones that inspire you, the ones that move you. They're rarely simple or easy. They're filled with challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But they're also filled with courage, resilience, and hope. Your story is no different. The silence you're experiencing now is just one chapter, not the whole book. Gentle reassurance. If you're feeling lost, remember that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to be in a season of waiting, to wonder what comes next. The author of your story hasn't forgotten you. Even in the quiet, even in the uncertainty, you are being held, guided, and loved. Inspiring. There is hope in the unknown. There is beauty in the becoming. The pages ahead are unwritten, and you have a part to play in how your story unfolds. You can choose hope, even when it's hard. You can choose to keep moving forward, even when the way isn't clear. You can trust that the silence will not last forever. Soft, uplifting. So take a deep breath. Look around you. Notice the small signs of life, the gentle reminders that you are not alone. Reach out to someone you trust. Write down your thoughts, your prayers, your dreams. Let yourself imagine what could be, even if you don't know how you'll get there yet. Encouraging, warm. Your story is still being written. There are new chapters ahead. Chapters of healing, of growth, of unexpected joy. The silence you feel now is not the end. It's the space where hope is born, where faith is strengthened, where new beginnings take root. Final, hopeful, hold on. Keep turning the page. Trust that the author is still at work, weaving together every moment, every tear, every hope. Your story matters, and the best is yet to come. Gentle pause. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. These words are more than just a gentle suggestion. They are an invitation. An invitation to pause, to breathe, and to remember who is truly in control, even when the world feels overwhelming or when God seems silent. In our fast-paced lives, silence can feel uncomfortable. We're used to noise, to constant updates, to always knowing what's next. But God's silence is not his absence. Sometimes it's in the quiet that he speaks the loudest. When we stop striving, when we let go of our need to control, we make space for God to move in our hearts. Think about the story of Elijah in 1 Kings 19. Elijah was desperate to hear from God, and he looked for him in the wind, the earthquake, and the fire. But God was not in those dramatic moments. Instead, he came in a gentle whisper. Sometimes, God's voice is found not in the chaos, but in the stillness. When God is silent, it's easy to feel forgotten or alone. But Psalm 46 reminds us that God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. He is with us, even when we can't hear him. His silence is not a punishment, but an opportunity for us to draw closer, to trust deeper, and to rest in his presence. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Let the noise of the world fade away. Imagine God sitting beside you, holding your hand, whispering, "Be still. I am here. I am God." In the stillness, we find strength. In the quiet, we find hope. God's silence is not the end of the story. It's the space where faith grows. It's where we learn to trust that he is working, even when we can't see it. If you're in a season of waiting, if you're longing to hear God's voice, know that you are not alone. Countless believers throughout history have walked this path. They have learned as you are learning that God is faithful. He is present. He is enough. So today, I invite you to be still, to lay down your worries, your questions, your fears, to rest in the knowledge that God is God, and that is enough. Let his peace fill your heart. Let his presence comfort you, even in the silence. If you're trusting God in the silence, type Amen in the comments. Let's encourage one another as we wait on him together. And hey, like, comment, and share this with someone who needs hope in the quiet. You never know who might need this reminder today. God bless you.